You spend enough time on the road and you learn that the world operates on a different rhythm out here. People in cities, they're deafened by the noise of it all. They think silence is the absence of sound. It's not. True silence, the kind you only find hundreds of miles from anywhere in the dead of night, that's not an absence, it's a presence. It's a physical thing that presses in on the cab of your truck, a weight of darkness and distance that settles on your shoulders. Some guys can't handle it. It gets in their heads, whispers things in the whine of the tires on asphalt. Me, I've always liked it. There's a purity to it. Out there, it's just you, 18 wheels, and the load you're hauling. On this particular night, the silence was deeper than usual. I was hauling a belly load of high-end electronics from California, pointed east. My destination was some distribution center in Oklahoma, but that was a world away. Right then, my world was a 50-foot stretch of cab and trailer hurtling through the Arizona desert on a stretch of old Route 66. The interstate, the I-40, runs parallel to a lot of the old road, but sometimes, when I'm not in a rush, I like to take the mother road. It's a shadow of its former self, sure, bypassed and forgotten, but it feels more honest. The cargo had a personality of its own. Thousands of computers, TVs, and stereos, all boxed up and sleeping in the back. But they weren't entirely quiet. There was this low, almost sub-audible hum coming from the trailer, the collective energy of a million dormant circuits. It vibrated up through the floor, a constant faint thrum against the soles of my boots. It was a strange companion to the deeper rumble of my diesel engine. The hum of the future, the roar of the present, all wrapped in the ancient silence of the desert. The moon was a sliver, offering no help. The only light was from my own headlights, cutting a tunnel through a blackness so complete it felt like it could swallow you whole. The desert scrub and jagged rocks would flash into existence at the edge of the beams, then disappear just as quickly, like apparitions. It's a hypnotic feeling driving through that, mile after mile, and nothing but the road, the hum, and the dock. You feel like the last man on Earth steering the planet from the captain's chair of a Peterbilt. That's when I saw them. I was checking my mirrors, a habit so ingrained it's like breathing. Left mirror, empty. Right mirror, 2 pinpricks of light. Headlights. They were way back, but they weren't there a second ago, I'm sure of it. On a road this straight, you can see another vehicle coming from miles. For a set of lights to just appear, it was wrong. The hair on my arms prickled. I told myself I just zoned out for a minute, lost in the rhythm of the drive. It had to be that. But as I watched the lights in the mirror, another thought surfaced. Cold and unwelcome. They weren't just appearing. They were rising up out of the road itself.
The first instinct is logic. You force it. You grab onto it like a lifeline because the alternative is something your mind doesn't want to touch. My logical brain told me it was a car that had been sitting on a dark side road, maybe a ranch entrance, and it pulled out behind me. That's all. The desert plays tricks on you. The emptiness can make you imagine things. But these lights, they were gaining on me, and fast. I was doing a steady 65, the sweet spot for my rig's fuel consumption. This guy behind me, he was eating up the asphalt like he was trying to outrun the devil himself. I figured it was some kid in a souped-up Mustang or a Camaro, full of youth and stupidity, trying to get a rise out of the old trucker. It happens. You learn to ignore them, let them have their fun and blow on by. I kept my eyes on the road ahead, but I could feel his presence in my mirrors. The lights grew brighter, closer, until they were 2 blazing orbs filling my entire rear view. They were so bright they bleached the color from the cab, but they didn't dazzle me. There was something clean about the light, something old. Not the sharp blue-white of modern LEDs. This was a softer, yellower glow, like something from another time. Then, instead of roaring past me in a burst of engine noise and adolescent fury, the vehicle slowed with a smoothness that was unnerving. It pulled out into the empty oncoming lane and drew up alongside my cab. The logical part of my brain, the part that had been so sure of itself, fell silent. It was a car, but it was unlike anything you see on the road today. It was a 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air, and it was perfect. The paint was a black so deep it seemed to drink the light from my own headlamps. The chrome wasn't just shiny, it glowed with a life of its own, from the big, toothy grille to the sharp, soaring tail fins that looked like they could cut the night air. It was a museum piece, a ghost of the golden age of American steel, cruising silently through the Arizona desert. And I do mean silently. My engine was a constant roar, the wind whistled past my windows, the electronics in the trailer hummed their electric song, but from the Chevy, nothing. Not a rumble from its engine, not the crunch of gravel under its tires. It moved with a spectral grace, a complete and total lack of sound that was more terrifying than any scream. I glanced over at the driver. I couldn't make out a face, just a dark shape behind the wheel, a silhouette. He didn't look over. He just stared straight ahead, his hand steady on the big steering wheel, focused on the empty road unwinding into the darkness. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. I gave a short, hesitant wave, the kind of gesture you give a fellow traveler on a lonely road. The silhouette didn't move, no nod, no wave back, nothing. He just drove on, a silent, beautiful, and deeply frightening partner in the middle of nowhere.
We drove like that for what felt like an eternity. Two phantoms cutting through the dark. My noisy, vibrating rig in this silent, pristine specter from the past. Every time I'd check my mirrors, my heart would hammer, expecting the Chevy to be gone. But every time, it was right there, perfectly paced with me, its polished chrome reflecting a distorted, warped version of my own truck. A weird feeling started to creep over me, something beyond the initial shock and fear. It was a feeling of being watched, of being measured. It was like the car and whoever was inside it was waiting for something. The silence from the Chevy wasn't just an absence of noise. It was an active, pressing silence. It felt like a question. I'm not a racer. My job is to get from A to B safely and on time. But the longer that car stayed beside me, the more a strange, primal urge began to build in my gut. It was a challenge. Not an aggressive, tire-squealing challenge, but something older, quieter. The road itself seemed to be holding its breath. The hum from the electronics in the trailer felt like it was rising in pitch, a nervous energy building around me. "All right," I finally muttered to the empty cab, my voice sounding rough and alien. "Let's see what you've got." Up ahead, I saw the sign. Passing lane, 1 mile. My hands tightened on the wheel. My foot hovered over the accelerator. This was stupid. I had a full load, a long way to go, and I was about to race a ghost car in the middle of the desert. But the feeling was overwhelming. I had to break the spell. I had to do something. As the road widened, I didn't hesitate. I pushed the accelerator to the floor. The big diesel engine under me roared in protest and then responded, the whole rig shuddering as it surged forward. The speedometer needle began to climb. 70, 75, 80. The world outside became a blur of streaking rock and sand. The wind screamed at my windows. I risked a glance to my left. The Chevy was still there, and it wasn't struggling. It was keeping pace with me effortlessly, its chrome fins slicing through the night. The silhouette inside was still motionless, still staring straight ahead as if I wasn't even there, as if my thundering 80,000-pound machine was nothing more than a mild breeze. 85. I was pushing my truck harder than I'd ever had. The engine was screaming. The frame was groaning. I held it there for a few seconds, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Then I glanced over again, and it was gone. Not fading into the distance.
not turning off onto a non-existent road. It didn't speed up and vanish ahead. Between one beat of my pounding heart and the next, the space where the '57 Chevy had been was just empty desert. The blackness rushed in to fill the void it had left behind. There was nothing there but the night, the rocks, and the unbroken silence that now felt 100 times heavier than before. My foot came off the accelerator. The truck slowed, the engine's roar quieting to a strained grumble. I pulled over onto the gravel shoulder, the brakes hissing as I came to a stop. I killed the engine. The sudden, total silence was deafening. I sat there, shaking, staring at the empty patch of road beside me, trying to understand the riddle of a race I'd just lost against a car that wasn't there.
For a long time, I just sat there on the shoulder of the road, the only sound the ticking of my cooling engine and the frantic thumping of my own heart. The desert, which had felt pure and cleansing just an hour ago, now felt menacing. It felt like it held secrets it wasn't meant to share. I needed lights. I needed people. I needed to see something that wasn't ancient, dark, and silent. I fired up the rig and got back on the road, driving slower now, scanning the darkness for more than just deer. Every flicker of a heat shimmer, every shadow cast by my headlights looked like the fin of a classic car. I felt like I was being hunted. My mind was a mess of adrenaline and disbelief, trying to piece together what had just happened. Phantom vehicles are the stuff of campfire stories and late-night radio shows, not something that pulls up alongside you on a Tuesday night. About 20 miles down the road, I saw a soft glow on the horizon, a neon sign. It was a diner, one of those little pockets of life and light that dot the old highways like lonely constellations. A place called the Starlight. Pulling into the gravel lot felt like docking a ship in a safe harbor. There were a couple of other rigs parked, their engines silent, their drivers asleep inside. The diner itself looked like it had been there since the road was new. A long, low building with big plate glass windows that poured warm, yellow light into the darkness. I walked in, the little bell over the door announcing my arrival with a cheerful, blessedly normal jingle. The air smelled of coffee, bacon grease, and cleaning solution. A handful of people were scattered at the booths and counter, a couple of old-timers nursing coffee, another driver hunched over a plate of eggs. Behind the counter was a waitress. She looked like she was part of the fixtures, with a beehive hairdo that defied gravity and a face etched with the lines of 1,000,000 night shifts. She looked up as I slid onto a stool at the counter, her eyes sharp and knowing. She didn't need to be a mind reader to see I was spooked. I probably looked like I'd just seen a ghost, which, I realized, was exactly what had happened. "Coffee, honey?" she asked, her voice raspy but kind. "Yeah, black, and make it strong," I managed to say. She poured a thick, dark liquid into a heavy ceramic mug and slid it in front of me. I wrapped my shaking hands around it, letting the warmth soak in. She leaned against the counter, wiping it with a rag, but she was watching me. "Rough night?" she finally asked. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "You could say that. Saw something weird back about 20-30 miles. A small knowing smile touched her lips. "Let me guess. He was fast, quiet, and had fins that looked like sharp enough to shave with?" I stared at her, my mouth half open. The coffee mug stopped halfway to my lips. "How'd you—" "Oh, honey," she said, her voice dropping a little, ticking on the tone of someone sharing a well-worn secret. "You met the ghost of Route 66. He gets around." She leaned in closer. "The story goes, he was a kid back in the late 50s, best racer in 3 counties. Had a '57 Chevy nobody could touch. One night, he was in a big-money race out on this very stretch. He was winning, leaving the other guy in his dust. But the other feller got desperate, clipped his rear quarter panel on purpose, sent him flying off the road. She gestured with her head toward the dark window. Never finished the race. They say he's still out here, looking for it. Still trying to get to a finish line that doesn't exist anymore. Some nights, he just wants to pace you. Some nights, he wants a race. I looked down into my coffee, the black surface reflecting my own pale, shocked face. The impossible event had a name. It had a story. I wasn't going crazy. I'd just become a character and a legend that had been playing out on this lonely road for over 60 years.
Leaving the diner was harder than arriving. The warmth, the smell of coffee, the waitress's matter-of-fact explanation. It had provided a temporary anchor. But walking back out into that immense, watchful darkness, the anchor was gone. The story hadn't made the experience less scary. It had given the fear a shape and a name, which was somehow worse. It was real. Other people had seen him. He wasn't just a trick of my tired mind. Getting back in my rig, the cab felt different. It was no longer my private sanctuary on wheels. It felt vulnerable, like a glass box in a world of shadows. The familiar hum of the electronics from the trailer behind me no longer sounded futuristic and exciting. It sounded like a nervous, high-strung whisper. The roar of the engine didn't feel powerful. It felt like a loud, clumsy beast blundering through a place where it didn't belong. The rest of the drive through Arizona was the longest night of my life. Every pair of headlights that appeared in my rearview mirror, no matter how distant, sent a jolt of ice through my veins. My eyes would fix on them, watching, waiting for them to grow unnaturally fast, to pull alongside me with an impossible silence. But they were always just other trucks, normal cars, their engines making normal sounds as they passed. Still, I couldn't relax. The road itself seemed to have changed. I started noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. The simple wooden crosses of roadside memorials, barely visible in the scrub brush, now seemed to glow with a faint, tragic light. Each one marked a story that ended right here, on this strip of asphalt. How many of them were just accidents? How many had a story like the one I just heard? The wind whistling through my side mirror, a sound I'd heard 1,000,000 times, now sounded like a mournful whisper. Flicking through the radio stations, the static between channels seemed to hold phantom sounds. For a split second, I'd swear I could hear the faint strains of old rock and roll or the deep guttural rev of a V8 that would vanish as soon as I tried to focus on it. Sleep, when I finally pulled over for a few hours at a rest stop near the New Mexico border, was fitful and thin. My dreams were filled with gleaming chrome and a faceless silhouette of a race with no finish line. I'd wake up with my heart pounding. The image of the vanishing Chevy burned onto the inside of my eyelids. The experience laid a new filter over my world. It was like I had been driving my whole life seeing only in black and white, and that night I'd been shown a single, terrifying flash of color. Now I couldn't unsee it. The world felt bigger, stranger, and much, much older. The open road was no longer just a stretch of pavement. It was a place layered with history, with the ghosts of people and dreams left behind. I was no longer just a driver hauling a load of electronics. I was hauling a new kind of cargo. A story, a memory, a fear that sat in the passenger seat beside me, as silent and heavy as a ghost. Months passed. The seasons turned. I hauled loads of lumber through the Pacific Northwest, produce through the farmlands of the Midwest, and machine parts across the South. The memory of that night in the Arizona desert began to fade, not disappearing, but sinking deeper, like a splinter working its way into the muscle. It became a story I kept to myself, a private ghost I lived with. I avoided that particular stretch of Route 66, telling myself it was just more efficient to stick to the interstate, but I knew the real reason. Then came a night in West Texas, on a long, straight shot of highway that felt 1,000 miles from anywhere. It wasn't Route 66, but it had the same soul, flat, empty, and dark. I was behind schedule, pushing my hours, my body aching with a fatigue that went bone deep. My eyelids felt like they were lined with sandpaper. The rumble of the engine, usually a comfort, had become a dangerous, hypnotic lullaby. I fought to stay awake, slapping my cheeks, blasting the air conditioning, and chugging lukewarm coffee. My head nodded forward once. My eyes closed for just a second, but in that second, the truck drifted. I remember the change in the sound of the tires as they left the smooth asphalt and hit the rumble strip on the shoulder. The jarring vibration should have snapped me awake, but I was too far gone. In that groggy, twilight state between sleep and consciousness, my foot stayed heavy on the accelerator. The truck was veering, pulling toward the deep ditch that ran alongside the highway. Suddenly, the cab was filled with an impossibly bright light from my left side. It wasn't the sweep of passing headlights. It was an instantaneous, blinding flash that burned through my closed eyes. With it came a sound that shook me to my core. Not a horn, but the distinct phantom roar of a vintage V8 engine revving high and hard for just a single, deafening second. My eyes flew open. My heart didn't just jump, it felt like it had been struck by lightning. Adrenaline vaporized the fatigue. My instincts screamed collision. I wrenched the steering wheel hard to the right, convinced I was about to be T-boned by a car at an intersection that didn't exist. The rig swerved violently back onto the road, the trailer fishtailing behind me with a terrifying groan of stressed metal and rubber. I wrestled with the wheel, my feet stomping on the clutch and brake, bringing the massive machine to a screeching, shuddering halt in the middle of the empty highway. For a moment, I just sat there, gasping for air, my entire body trembling. Then I scrambled out of the cab, my flashlight beam cutting wildly through the darkness. I looked left, nothing. I looked right, nothing. The road was empty in both directions for as far as I could see. There was no intersection, no side road, no other vehicle, just my truck, the silent, empty plains, and the lingering echo of a sound that had no source. Standing there in the chilling Texas wind, a new understanding washed over me. The ghost of that '57 Chevy wasn't just aimlessly reliving his final moments. He wasn't just looking for a race. This time, he hadn't been a challenger or a mystery. He had been a warning. That flash of light, that impossible roar, it hadn't been a threat. It had saved my life. The ghost of the road was more than just a scary story. He was a guardian of it, and for reasons I would never understand, he had just watched out for me.
It's been years since that night in Texas. I'm an old hand now, with more miles behind me than I have in front of me. I've seen snow that can bury a rig in minutes, heat that can bake the paint off a hood, and winds that can try to tear a trailer from its kingpin. I've seen it all, but I've never again seen the '57 Chevy pull up beside me, not up close anyway. I don't tell the story to just anyone. You tell a tale like that at a busy truck stop and you get one or two looks. Either they think you're crazy or they think you're a liar. But sometimes, late at night, when you're sharing a pot of coffee with another driver who has the same look in his eyes, that look of having spent too much time staring into the dark, you might share a piece of it. And more often than you think, they'll nod slowly and tell you about something they saw once, something that didn't make sense. The road has stories for anyone willing to listen. I don't live in fear of the ghost anymore. The terror of that first encounter has been replaced by a strange kind of respect, a sense of connection to something that defies explanation. The road isn't just a job for me, it's a life, and that life now includes a silent, watchful presence. I still see him, I swear I do, never for more than a heartbeat. It'll be a flash of impossible chrome in the reflection of a darkened storefront window as I rode through a sleeping town in the middle of the night, or I'll be checking my rearview mirror on a long, empty stretch of highway, and for just a fraction of a second, I'll see the unmistakable silhouette of that car, the sharp line of a tail fin, before it dissolves back into the heat haze or the darkness. It's never threatening, it's just there, a reminder. A flicker at the edge of my vision, a ghost in the machine. He's out there, eternally running his race on a highway of memory, and I'm out here, running mine. We're two travelers on the same endless road, each hauling our own ghosts. And sometimes I get the feeling he's just checking in, making sure the other lonely drivers of the night make it safely to the morning. People think the open road is just about asphalt and the rumble of the engine, but sometimes you see things, and sometimes those things see you too.